Index funds are one of the greatest wealth building tools ever invented. Warren Buffett recommends them. Jack Bogle built an empire around them. Every personal finance video tells you to buy them. And they're right. But here's what they're not telling you, and it's costing Australian investors tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. There are three massive mistakes hiding inside the just buy index funds advice. And today we're going to fix all three of them. Welcome to WealthStackHQ, where we cut through the noise and give you the real mechanics of building wealth. Today's video is about index funds, not the beginner basics. You've seen those videos. This is the stuff that's never in those videos. The three things the gurus consistently get wrong, oversimplify, or flat out skip. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which index funds to own, how to hold them to pay the least tax legally, and why the fund you pick matters almost as much as the decision to invest at all. Let's start with mistake number one. Index funds are cheap. That's the line you always hear. And compared to actively managed funds, yes, absolutely. But here's what nobody tells you. Not all index funds are equal. The fee difference between the best and worst index funds on the Australian market is literally the difference between retiring comfortably and working 5 extra years. Let me give you real numbers. If you invest $500 a month for 30 years, earning an average 9% return, you end up with roughly $915,000. Now let's say your index fund charges a management expense ratio, called an MER, of 0.67% per year. That's not unusual. Many Australians are in funds charging that right now, sometimes more. Over 30 years, that fee quietly siphons $187,000 out of your portfolio. Now compare that to a fund with an MER of 0.07%. That's the Vanguard Australian Shares ETF, ticker VAS, or the Beta Shares A200, which comes in at just 0.04%. The difference? You'd lose only $20,000 to fees over the same period. That's a $167,000 gap. Same market, same returns, just different fees. The guru says buy index funds, but they don't tell you that the fund you pick can cost you the equivalent of a house deposit or give it back to you. So what should you look for? Keep your MER under 0.2% for Australian ETFs. Anything above 0.3% on a pure index fund is a red flag. The three funds that come up most for Australians are VAS for local exposure, VGS for international, and DHHF if you want a single all-in-one global fund with automatic rebalancing. All of them sit well below 0.3%. That's mistake one fixed. Now here's the one that surprises most people. Index funds give you diversification. True. But the type of diversification matters enormously, and most Australians are accidentally making a very concentrated bet without knowing it. Here's the problem. Australia makes up approximately 2% of global stock market capitalization. That means if you put 100% of your money into an Australian index fund like VAS or A200, you're putting 100% of your future financial security into 2% of the world's economy. And it gets more concentrated than that. Within the ASX, the top 10 companies make up nearly 40% of the index. Banks and mining dominate. Commonwealth Bank alone is around 9% of VAS. So when you buy the whole Australian market, you're really buying a very heavy bet on Australian banks, BHP, and Rio Tinto. That's not diversification, that's concentration with extra steps. Now here's the nuance the gurus miss. There's also something called home country bias, and Australians suffer from it badly. Studies show the average Australian investor holds somewhere between 60 and 75% of their equity portfolio in Australian shares, even though Australia is 2% of the world. The fix is straightforward. You want global exposure. VGS tracks around 1,500 companies across 23 developed markets, United States, Europe, Japan, Canada, or BGBL from Beta Shares does something very similar. Both give you exposure to Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Nestle, Toyota, the companies actually driving global GDP growth. A simple split that works for a lot of Australians: 70% VGS for global, 30% VAS for Australian. That split gives you meaningful local exposure and the franking credit benefits that come with Australian dividends, while making sure your future isn't entirely dependent on whether the big four banks have a good decade. One more thing on diversification. Some gurus say crypto is part of a diversified portfolio, some say bonds, some say REITs. At WealthStackHQ, we're not financial advisors, and this isn't personal advice, but the core principle is simple. Owning an index fund is not automatically diversification. Diversification means your wealth isn't decimated if one country, one sector, or one currency has a bad decade. Make sure your index funds actually deliver that. Here's the mistake that cost Australian investors the most money in absolute dollar terms, and it's almost never talked about in index fund videos. Where you hold your index funds matters as much as which funds you hold. In Australia, we have a genuinely powerful tax structure available to almost everyone, and most people aren't using it. Here's how the tax math works. If you're a typical Australian professional earning $90,000 a year, you're in the 34.5% marginal tax bracket, including the Medicare levy. Every dividend your index fund pays, every capital gain you realize, that income gets taxed at your marginal rate. A $10,000 dividend from VAS in a personal account costs you $3,450 in tax. But here's the lever most people are sleeping on: superannuation. Inside super, investment earnings are taxed at 15%, not 34.5%. 15%. That same $10,000 dividend inside your super fund costs you $1,500 in tax. You keep $8,500 instead of $6,550. And if you're in the retirement phase, which starts from age 60, the tax rate drops to 0. Now I know what you're thinking, but I can't touch super until I'm 60. That's true. And that's why this is a strategy, not a replacement for outside super investing. The answer isn't all in super or all outside. It's both. Here's a simple framework. For money you'll need before 60, emergency funds, property deposit, shorter term goals, hold your index funds in a brokerage account, stake, ComSec, Pocket, Perler, Self-Wealth, whichever you prefer. For long-term retirement wealth, salary sacrifice into super, make voluntary contributions up to the concessional cap. As of this year, that's $30,000 per year, including your employer's contributions. That money goes in at 15% tax instead of your marginal rate, and it grows at 15% inside super instead of 34.5%. The numbers over 30 years are staggering. A person who maximizes salary sacrifice into a low-fee super fund invested in a global index fund, compared to the same person making no voluntary contributions, can end up with an additional $400,000 to $700,000 at retirement from the same income. The only difference is the tax wrapper. That's not a small optimization. That's the difference between retiring comfortably and retiring wealthy. So let's pull this together. The truth about index funds isn't that they're bad, they're brilliant. But the three mistakes most Australians make are choosing high-fee funds, holding 100% in Australian shares, and keeping all their investments in a personal account paying full marginal tax rates. The fix is simple: low-fee funds, VAS, VGS, DHHF, a genuine global split, not just Australia, and a tax-aware strategy both inside and outside super based on your time horizon. You don't need to be a finance expert. You don't need to pick stocks. You need the right index funds, the right mix, and the right account structure. That's the wealth stack that actually works. If this video gave you something useful, something the standard buy index funds advice skips, hit like. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people. Subscribe to WealthStackHQ for weekly deep dives on building real wealth without the jargon. And drop a comment below. Are you currently invested in index funds, or are you just getting started? I'd love to know where you're at. Next week, we're covering something that almost no Australian finance channel touches: how to use your home equity to generate investment returns without selling your house. That one's going to shift how you think about your biggest asset. See you then.